Welcome back to the ECHO Evolve On conference. I hope you were all able to grab a snack and a tea or a coffee. Congratulations again to all of our award winners. Michelle Sampson and her team in Vaughan are doing some amazing work. Chris and Vicky and your team in Bay of Quinte, congratulations. I still have that beautiful hardcover tour guide that you won an award for years ago. Up next, I'd like to introduce our next session, Up to Speed, Ontario's Broadband and Cellular Action Plan. This is going to be an amazing session featuring Mayor, Chair, and Chair of the Economic Development Committee for Western Ontario Warrens Caucus, George Bridge, Deputy Mayor Kelly Elliott, and we also have a speaker from SpaceX for this panel. So we are thrilled to have this great panel, and here we go.
Good morning, everyone. I'm super excited today to have this panel with us to talk about Up to Speed, Ontario's Broadband and Cellular Action Plan. And we have a really star-studded packed panel today to discuss this really important topic for Ontario economic development. And some of you may be wondering, why is this Town and Gown Association of Ontario president moderating a discussion about rural internet access? Well, many universities and colleges in Ontario are located in cities, but many of them, particularly outside of the Greater Golden Horseshoe, service communities and students that come from rural areas. And so given the pandemic, many students are facing difficulties in accessing internet and their courses and participating really in the digital economy and in a digital society. So for us, internet access in rural communities actually is a critical town and gown issue, and one that I don't think is going to go away after the pandemic. So today, I'm really excited to introduce our panelists. And first up, who I'd like to welcome is George Bridge, who's been the mayor of the town of Minto since 2010. Mayor Bridge is well known for his engagement with the Federation of Canadian Municipalities and tireless advocacy with many Western Ontario economic development entities. Today, we are excited to learn more about SWIFT and what it means for rural internet connectivity. Over to you, Mayor Bridge.
Thanks, AJ. And you're not alone in that. I've got some grandkids that are in high school, and they're working from a rural internet perspective, and they really struggle. So this is something we talked about going back to 2014 when I first started with the SWIFT project with the Western Wardens. And maybe if I put that first slide up, I'll give you a bit of an idea of where we are. Okay. Next slide. Not quite getting it. There we are. So yeah, I just wanted to give a bit of an idea of where the SWIFT region is. And as you can see, it takes up quite a bit of Ontario, pretty well everything west of the city of Toronto and the GTA, although we picked up Niagara region came with us, and Waterloo and Caledon, London, Windsor. So we've got quite a cross section of people. The Western Warden is in the yellow area. Next slide. So I just give you an idea. As I said, in 2014, there was quite a demand in the rural area in the Western Wardens to try to get rural broadband going. And so we had the process starting in 2014 and 16, which we went out for government funding. We were successful in getting some. And so therefore we moved into our phase 1, 2, and 3. Now, phase 1 was just getting the business case developed and getting the funding. And phase 2, I was lucky enough in Wellington and Norfolk and Lambton, we were the pilot projects to see if our idea of our RFPs and what we're going to get back from the private sector would work, and certainly did in those 3. And then we got on to phase 3, and we've been working through that. It's in progress as well. And we should have all those completed RFP-wise by the end of the year and started into the ground. So moving to the next slide. So originally we were coming up with $209 million worth of funding, a third from the federal government, a third from the province, and a third from the private sector. And then we had municipal contributions as well from all the municipalities that you saw there. Next slide. which I was really excited to show this one. This is the current view of where we are. And this is why I think it's so important that all three levels of government and private sector are part of this solution. And as you can see from this slide, the third private sector amount, phase 2 targeted 10.5 million in private sector ISP contributions, received 18.1, or 7.6 million more than the target. If we maintain this rate in phase 3, which I'm told we'll soon have the numbers for, would be 109 million and total project spend of 256 million. And then to get to the 260, as you can see from there, we had a couple municipalities that decided that when they were doing their projects, they would add another $3.8 million into the projects, so they're able to get most of their on service looked after at that point. So a very good achievement at that area. Next slide. The next 3 slides give you a little bit of an idea of where we are with 78% of our procurement completed. As you can see there, originally our projected target date, and we had 50,000 premises passed. We're at 52,227 already. So we're doing really good, and 15,978 over our target. So we'll definitely hit that target. Next slide. This is kilometers passed. When you're in the rural areas and trying to get that last mile, you have to go down a lot of kilometers to get a few people. So this gives you an idea that we've done 3,061 kilometers. Our target was 3,095. We're only 78% through, so we'll definitely achieve this. We're 841 over right now. Next slide. And there again, I will reiterate that we've got $51 million more in funding, and I told you before how that it was done. Next slide. This is one that was very interesting, because when we first started this project, a lot of people were concerned that the big guys, the Bells and the Rogers, would take all the money and run with it. And we had a lot of pushback from our small ISPs because of that. And but we, as you see from this graph or this chart, we've done 49% of them have been the small ISPs, which are the ones we normally know in our area. Large Bell and Rogers did 24%, and the mid-size Cogeco and Explorenet did 27. So we're really pleased with that. And just to give you an idea, Quattro out of Oxford, their premises passed was 3.4 per kilometer. So, and the majority of them, the bigger ones, were around 17 people per kilometer. So that really makes a big difference. Next slide. Now we're going into trying to get to the last people, and there's a lot of people out there where they're excited about the projects to date, but they certainly aren't there yet, because we have a lot of almost 2/3 of our province or our area to get fixed. So Swift Point 2.0. Next slide. So that gives you an idea, and we're bumping this up because the federal government wanted us to go a little bit more aggressive. So this one is a gig project. We will address 95% of the population of the region. And the reason we want to do this in our area, it makes sense because of the fact that we don't want to keep going back year after year, and as internet needs more bandwidth, that we have to go back year after year. So we'll need higher subsidies to get into that smaller last mile situation. So we're figuring our average is 4.2 premises per kilometer, and right now we're well over 10. So all counties are included in this. So we're changing our funding structure, so all the counties and everybody will be at the same boat. So I'll put the same money in and get the same return on their investment. And I could probably end there. I'm sure we're going to have lots of opportunity, AJ, to do some more questions and stuff like that. So I'm looking forward to having the conversation.
All right, perfect. Thank you so much, Mayor Bridge. And I think you've laid out what is a really exciting project, at least in part of Ontario, in bringing rural internet access. And you mentioned the private sector's importance in this, and I think I'm really excited today in that we have Jonathan Hoffler from who's the VP of Starlink and commercial sales for SpaceX. And for those of you who are unaware what Starlink is, it's a commercial endeavor to deliver low latency broadband internet access to the world through a network of thousands of satellites in low Earth orbit. And today we're excited to learn more about Starlink and how it could connect Ontario's rural and remote communities. So over to you, Jonathan.
Great. Thank you for having me, Mayor Bridge. Pleasure to be on this panel with you. Very exciting what we have going on at SpaceX with the Starlink project. With so many people working from home and attending school remotely, we've just seen that internet access is absolutely critical to everything that we do. And so, Starlink, if you want to go to the next slide, like was mentioned, is a constellation. We've launched over 1,000 satellites. We had a launch yesterday of an additional 60 satellites that are operating from space and are able to provide you low latency, high bandwidth connectivity. It's very different than traditional satellite internet, in which the low latency does enable connectivity like this, Zoom calls, WebExes, and then the high bandwidth has been previously unseen. So it allows you to get high quality internet in regions that previously you haven't been able to get. The beauty in what we have is its simplicity. If you go to the next slide, is actually going to go to slide. You just go to slide 4 if you want. Yeah. So the beauty of what we have is in its simplicity. We have these Starlink kits, which is the antenna that you see there. It's about the size of a large pizza. We ship it directly to your home. You plug it in, and you have internet. It's that simple. And within minutes, you're connected to extremely high speeds in a low latency network. We have been deployed. There are thousands of folks on this, thousands of Canadians as we speak that are using this in remote areas. A couple great data points, if you go to the next slide, is that one of the first people connected in Canada was the Bekanjikum tribe. And these were folks that were previously didn't have connectivity that was able to support their needs. A great quote from the First Nation Chief Dan Owen. He said, "The delivery of Starlink's internet services will transform our abilities to deliver local services, create economic opportunities, access education, training, health and wellness, and improve the quality of life of our children, youth, and families." So that is the connectivity that we're bringing across the globe, and where we complement the fiber rollouts is in the hard to reach places. That's where we shine the best. And to date, we've seen a great reaction to the demand and the need, and we're excited to provide services moving forward.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Jonathan. And so I think that provides a really interesting perspective of, somewhat of a public approach to delivering in the ground infrastructure, and then this commercial approach that really is providing this flexible infrastructure where we can get into areas that may not be as accessible or haven't been reached yet. And now I actually want to turn to our next panelist, Kelly Elliott, who is the Deputy Mayor for the municipality of Thames Centre. Deputy Mayor Elliott serves on the boards of the Ontario Good Roads Association and Federation of Canadian Municipalities. She's been a passionate voice for fairness and delivering reliable internet access to rural communities. And today we are excited to hear her perspective on how to connect hundreds of thousands of Ontario families to an increasingly essential service and utility. So, Deputy Mayor Elliott, what's some of your first thoughts here on this panel today?
Well, first off, thanks for having me, and I'm happy to be a part of this with Mayor Bridge and Jonathan as well. As a highlight, like you said, AJ, I'm the Deputy Mayor of Thames Centre as well as a councillor on Middlesex County Council, and we actually just approved this past week 7 SWIFT projects across Middlesex County. So we're excited to be a part of SWIFT and get some infrastructure in the ground to service our residents in our rural areas. As you mentioned as well, I'm a director on FCM as well as Ontario Good Roads. I also sit on the Board of Health for Middlesex Lennon Health Unit, as well as various other committees in my local community. In my spare time, I work full time as well in digital marketing, and probably my favorite title by far is being a mom to 2 kids who are struggling in the remote learning in our virtual world here. So I am very passionate about all issues rural, but especially broadband, just because it touches every aspect and every facet of our lives, whether it comes to, as I said, the virtual learning for our kids, accessing healthcare, including mental health resources, accessing those doctor's appointments, programming it for our residents who are caring for the elderly. So, and attracting businesses, of course, in our communities. So wherever you are, the access to the reliable internet in our rural communities is absolutely important. So I grew up on a cash crop and hog farm, and I actually just live 2 farms down from where I grew up on a back gravel road. And rural life is something that I have always been used to, and I'm very passionate, and I love it so much. Just always the downside is being the internet access. And so through this entire pandemic, obviously. It's heightened the need. As Mayor Bridge had mentioned, rural communities have been advocating for better access for over a decade now. And finally, in this pandemic, I feel like it's absolutely come to the forefront just because we've moved to such a virtual world where everything is dependent on being able to access the internet. And often our rural communities for the past decade have been forgotten and overlooked when it comes to the infrastructure and the new technologies, which is why taking every opportunity like this to talk about it is so important. And so my community in Thames Centre, we just border the city of London in southwestern Ontario. And we have found that as soon as you leave the city borders, essentially you're leaving behind digital civilization as we know it. And we know that in April 2020, the CIRA had measured what rural communities were experiencing when it came to download speeds in comparison to our urban neighbors. And we were seeing that our urban neighbors were experiencing speeds 12 times faster than our rural communities. And so that really, really highlighted the importance of what we do. And just to get back to, the economic development point of view here in our rural areas is our agricultural industry. And it's so predominant in my community in Thames Centre, and I know for Mayor Bridge as well. And having that reliable high-speed internet for our modern farms to make those business decisions, to facilitate the marketing of farm products, and to operate the on-farm technology is a huge component. In Ontario alone, we have 38,000 family farm businesses, and agriculture and our agri-food businesses are the leading economic drivers in our province. And they contribute $40 billion to the GDP, employ over 800,000 Ontarians. So it's so important in our rural communities in order to facilitate our agricultural industry that we have that reliable internet. And also just from a municipal standpoint, that we attract and we retain the businesses that are investing in our communities. That internet is needed so they can compete and grow.
That's fantastic. And Kelly, I know, and as well as Mayor Bridge, in my other hat as the a doctoral student in the Human Environments Analysis Lab at Western University, we've been leading the Food Retail Environment Study for Health and Economic Resiliency. And we're studying, sort of how the pandemic's impacted food-based businesses and the agricultural sector in all of Western Ontario. And one of the biggest things we're hearing is internet access. For many rural communities, especially for those like Thames Centre and others that border some of these larger cities, it's really a competitiveness issue where these businesses can't get online, they can't get on the delivery service websites, they have a limited web presence, and meanwhile, they're only a 10-minute drive, and there's no reason why someone in London couldn't order from them. So that, I think, it's such a crucial economic issue that cuts across all aspects of Ontario economic development. So I'm really excited to dive into this panel because I think there's a lot to go off of. So let's get into one of our first questions. So we all know, and I think we've all said, internet connectivity is really crucial for economic competitiveness. So I really wanted to hear, what are some of the benefits we're already seeing from communities that have been connected? So Mayor Bridge, I'd love to hear from you first, sort of what's been the impact of SWIFT over the last couple of years?
Well, and thank you for that, AJ. And you're dead on as far as and Kelly, great job on the bringing the rural into it and the farms, because we're at a big dairy operation area, and without robots to run the milk production, we're in big trouble, and they don't have the conductivity, they can't do that. So, but yeah, to answer your question, we've been lucky enough in our small towns. Minto is made up of 3 small towns: Clifford, Harrison, and Palmerston, and we've had fiber optic for many years in those towns through Whiteman, one of our small ISPs that was out there. So we've seen it right from that standpoint without the people in the rural, but we've attracted a lot of people coming into our area that the first thing they say when they come up from the cities is, "What's your internet like?" And AJ, if you don't have the internet, you're not getting the people. And we've developed a lot of good industries. A lot of people have migrated from the cities, and we're going to see more of that coming forward. And part of the thing, and I said the other day to somebody, one of the big advantages of maybe spreading the urban population out into the rural areas a little bit, if we can work from home and do some of this stuff, is the fact that we might not need the big highways anymore. We might not need as much of the subways or the connections, so we can move this back out. So I'm kind of excited that it's going to work the other way, and we're seeing that. And but if we don't get it out into our rural areas, our farms are going to suffer, and we need to get that going. So, and you know what, I want to say, we don't think Swift is the total answer. We work with everybody, because I don't care how you get internet as long as you get internet. So Jonathan, when I say that, I mean, we've been working on this since 2014, and I think we have a good product, and we're able to leverage it well. But at the end of the day, we tell everybody, if a company comes in and wants to work with you and put internet in there, go ahead and work with them.
Yeah, that's fantastic, Mayor Bridge. And I think, Jonathan, we'd love to hear from you on Starlink and what has been rolled out here, at least in Ontario, and what you foresee, sort of building off of Mayor Bridge, some impacts that could happen as coverage expands in the Ontario area.
Sure. And as Mayor Bridge mentioned, like this is a team effort. Starlink can serve quite a few people, but we're a complement to the fiber efforts going out. And so, like you said, everyone needs connectivity, and it's a group effort. So, we're motivated. I get emails, calls every day, as I'm sure the rest of the panelists do, is, connect me at, turn on my cell, my children need to attend school. And so we've been busting our butt through the pandemic to roll out, and we rolled out our, what we call Better Than Nothing beta test program in Southern Canada and Northern US. And, within a week of regulatory approvals from the Canadian government, and no small part thanks to the support from the Canadians across Ontario to champion it and get it on board. We had people connected. As I mentioned, the Bacangicum First Nations tribe. We're also connecting, we've connected schools. We've connected in the pandemic, some schools are not at full capacity. Some students will come in, and then what do you do with the other, half of the classroom that has to stay home? And so we've found opportunities to provide Starlink connectivity to the folks at home and in the school, and the teachers as well. So this is all happening live as we speak. The other benefit that we've talked about, connectivity has always been an issue, but in northern part of the United States, there was a lot of wildfires. We see a lot of disaster and disaster recovery. Big part of recovery, just like you would expect for a sustainable life, is getting connectivity back. So we've deployed in several cases connectivity to fire departments, where in local areas that need to get back online, whether that's being able to process your insurance claims or get all the bills up and running again, contacting, sharing information about the devastation. So this is all happening as we speak. We're going as fast as we can to connect as many people as we can. What else can I talk about? We're there. We're ready. We're pushing it as hard as we can for folks, like you mentioned, on the farms. We're trying to connect to as many farms, and a lot of it is just spreading the word of what's available. And we are going slow to make sure that one of the things that we're doing differently is that satellite internet has a stigma to it, and so people don't jump into it, and getting the word out to the rural communities that this is just great internet. Don't worry that it's coming from a satellite or it's coming from space. This is great internet. It's going to connect you just like your friends, you said 10 minutes down the street that have fiber access. So could use your help in getting that word out.
Yeah, and I think this is a great audience for that, because economic development is so crucial as we roll out broadband access in the province. And I just wanted to pick up on one of the last things you mentioned there around farms, and going back to what Mayor Bridge mentioned on this sort of duality of, we've got this increasing digitization in the agricultural sector, which we're going to need people living up in these communities in order to service that digitization and deal with these different machines and technologies that I think are just coming in at a breakneck pace. I was speaking with someone who's doing a lot of venture capital management a couple of weeks ago for agricultural land, and just him telling me of how agricultural is changing in the province. I think it's a huge opportunity. But also, Mayor Bridge, I think you're right. The pandemic's showing to a lot of people what the rural lifestyle can mean. And so, Kelly, I think you're in a unique position there in Thames Centre, being so close to such a large southwestern Ontario centre. I'd be interested to learn a little bit more about what you see is the economic angle of, we've got so much here in Thames Centre, we just got to get connected, and what could we unlock in some of these rural communities?
Absolutely. Actually, the Ontario Federation of Agriculture for the past few years has been talking about the importance of distributed economic development and building up our rural communities, and the need that we don't need large urban centers where everything's focused around it. We can offer that in rural communities as well. But obviously the connectivity is a huge part of that. I'm seeing, weekly throughout the pandemic, I'm getting phone calls from real estate agents and from people who are looking to come out to Thames Centre. And their first question they ask me is, what's the internet like there? And because geographically, Thames Centre is fairly large. We have a couple villages that do have great internet in it, but it's as soon as you get out of those villages that you lose that connectivity. So obviously they want to know, because more people are leveraging their homes as their office space to reduce that environmental footprint. That's a huge deal. So can they run a home office out of their house is the biggest thing for them. So having projects like Swift 2.0 and having projects like Starlink as well is a huge benefit to our rural and our smaller communities.
That's perfect. And I think, there's so much potential here, and there's a lot of different people acting in this space, but, two of the players I don't see here at the table right now, and no offense to them, is the provincial government and the federal government. So what I'd love to hear from this panel is really what is needed from the province, what is needed from the feds to get this happening and get it rolling out quicker. And you know what, let's turn it right back to Deputy Mayor Elliott again.
So we've joked often in Thames Centre is the leadership. It's what we've seen is, broadband internet is being treated like a poker game. So the federal government's waiting for the provincial government to show their cards, and the municipalities are waiting for the province, and everybody's just waiting for someone to take the leap on this. And what we've seen in Swift 2.0 and what they've done is they've created an alignment and kind of streamlined that so everyone can work together. And I think that's where the success of this has to go, is the province and the federal government and the municipalities all working together to get these projects on the go. And each one has the ability to bring something to the table. The federal government has the money, and if the province brings the legal framework on how to do it, and then the implementation comes to the municipalities, because as Mayor Bridge can attest as well, municipalities, we know our communities best. We know where the fiber is, we know where the towers are, we know where the needs are. So that implementation can really come down to the municipalities to get the ball moving. But again, the province and the federal government definitely play a role in it as well.
Perfect. And Mayor Bridge, let's hear from someone who's been leading sort of the SWIFT project. What's needed here?
Well, I'm really pleased to hear Kelly explain it so well, because she's the next generation. She's the one that's going to take the ball to the end. I might be getting old and a little bit long in the tooth here, but great job. And one of the things that Kelly brought up, and the fact we started SWIFT years ago, was we felt by speaking with more of a single voice in our area and representing 3 million people and bringing some of the cities along with us. So it's an urban rural thing, so we basically have been getting a good voice to the government, and through FCM, and I know Kelly, welcome aboard to FCM. I know you're just coming on board, but the Rural Caucus across Canada has been working on rural broadband. Now we have the announcement of $1.7 billion, but we have to get to the delivery. And Kelly hit it nicely. The delivery should come in the municipality area. We know the people. And I listen to both federal and provincial governments, and they'll tell you, you're the closest to the people and you're the place we want to go. So if we just have to paint the picture and make sure that they realize that we want to get it out, we don't want to spend taxpayers' money frivolously. We want to make sure that every dollar that we spend of taxpayers' money, because it's all you and my money, whether it's federal, provincial, or municipal, it goes to the right source to where we can get the best bang for our buck. So, and again, we got to get this done. And I'm looking forward to, we have Roma coming up, and we've got meetings with much ministers, and we'll be talking Sunday with Western Wardens, and we have, but we have to get the provincial government has been very good cooperating with us, and the federal government as well. So I think we've made the point. Now we just have to make sure we get the rest of the money to deliver.
And Mayor Bridge, I think you make an excellent point there on this isn't, some urban rural divide. It's really important to bring the cities along with you, because I think they're recognizing, particularly in London and Windsor, that they're relying on these surrounding rural communities for a lot of economic potential and development. I mean, if you think about classic economic theories of hinterland, heartland, stuff's got to come from somewhere, and stuff's got to get consumed somewhere. And I think, this approach of recognizing that it needs to be one integrated digital approach is so crucial to moving forward. And so, Jonathan, you're not in a political role here. You're more coming from the commercial side. I'm just wondering from you, what do you see from the federal and provincial perspective on promoting confidence in rolling out Starlink?
Yeah, and so we've seen great support from Ontario and the other provinces, where again, unique to Starlink, the service is there. There's no timeline to delivery per se, given you don't need to trench fiber and all the rest of that. But currently we're limited, and we could use help in motivating the federal government to push forward some of the regulatory pieces of it, streamlining the approval process so we can move higher in latitudes. Right now, we're limited from some gateway licensing that we have in place. So, I mean, that's something that we would ask for is still the support at the provincial level, and then the federal government streamlining their process and pushing forward some approvals.
Yes, and I imagine, speaking about streamlining that process and the approvals, for many people, they may not appreciate truly how much space or low Earth orbit Canada actually has control over and can dictate where these satellites are placed. So I think that's a really important point to make. And one of the other things I wanted to ask you about, and maybe Mayor Bridge also wants to chime in here, is about this sort of we're digging channels and putting fiber in the ground to these communities, but we've also got these satellites coming up. Is there some sort of rationalization we maybe need to think through so that we're not, ending up putting fiber in the same place that we're putting a satellite in?
They will always be complementary. I mean, we tend not to serve places that have great fiber. So, there's limited capacity about who we can serve and where. So as fiber goes further and further out, we'll serve more and more remote areas. I definitely don't see it as a competition. And at the end of the day, we get on fiber to deliver it to the internet. So we need fiber as well in these locations. So yeah, I don't see it. I see it as very, very complementary.
That's perfect. Thank you, Jonathan. So I guess let's move into sort of.
Can I speak to that?
Absolutely, Mayor Bridges.
And I like what Jonathan's saying there. He's right. It takes a lot longer to get fiber in the ground and get going. And I do feel that there's a need if somebody can get a satellite hookup that works good for them before we get there, or in some cases, even in Southwestern Ontario, even though we're more dense, there's some cases where it just isn't physically possible to get it there, or it just doesn't become an economic value to get it there. So that when we say 95%, we still have 5%. It might even be 90% we can do in the next little while, or 85. We need to make sure people get the fiber right away, or not the fiber, but the internet right away, the high speed, wherever they are. So if we can work with a company like Jonathan's or some other companies that they can fill that gap, all the best.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point that we've heard many times today is you don't really care if it's coming in the ground or over the air as long as you get it there. And I think that's crucial really anywhere in Ontario, especially, outside of the Greater Golden Horseshoe, where this is critical. Internet access is really, the gateway to joining the digital economy that we're now living in. And I guess, we've heard rumblings about it, but there's a lot of other public policy priorities going on right now that intersect with broadband access. And so I'd love to hear from everyone on this panel. What do they see as sort of the priorities for their local areas or just Ontario in general? So Mayor Bridge, do you want to kick us off here?
Sure, I will. And it was funny, I was listening to our keynote speaker for EDCO there, Janice Stein, and they actually did a little survey on our opening there about where the government should focus on infrastructure. Digital infrastructure was 47%. And she said, basically, as an economist, that's where the government should look at, is digital infrastructure, because if we get that right, as I say, we had those situations where we can actually spread the population out, cut down some of our urban density, maybe, so we don't have as many roads and other things. And she was really, if you get a chance to listen to her, she was very amazing as to how she talked about why it's so important to get that digital thing. And we all know that, and Kelly's talked about with her kids and my grandkids. And if we ever get in these situations we're at. So if I was the government coming out of this, the best economic driver to get the economy up and rolling is digital infrastructure. So they should hit that first, and we'll fix the roads later.
That's awesome. Thank you, Mayor Bridge. And Deputy Mayor Elliott, what do you have to add here?
Yeah, I'm just nodding my head here. Back in last fall, we started the Women's Caucus of Middlesex County Council, and we held a webinar for women across Middlesex County, and it was to hear about how they were coping through the pandemic. And every facet of the troubles that they're having is based on internet. So it's, their kids are having trouble, and I'll speak to it personally because I have a 14 and 11-year-old who, as you're listening to this, they're struggling to get through their Google Meets and get through and upload their assignments and everything like that. So there's, the parents and the moms that were struggling with their kids' online learning. There were the moms with high needs children, who can't access the healthcare that their child needs because they have virtual doctor's visits now, and they're struggling to get on those. There were the daughters, that they're caring for their elderly parents. They've lost their VON programming and everything's moved to virtual, but then they can't get online for their parents to get that programming that they need through the VON. For people that are looking at getting affordable housing or accessing social services, that's all moved virtual. They can't get onto that. So every facet of the struggles that we've been through this COVID pandemic in rural communities is vital to that digital virtual world that we're living in. So in order for us to get out of this pandemic, and as we move more into a virtual world where, remote learning is a possibility, and for the province to provide equitable learning wherever you are in the province, lands on the need to be able to access reliable high-speed internet.
Yeah, and I think you hit it right on the head. This is really an issue about fairness for Ontario families, and especially, fairness to those who are outside of urban areas. And really, we've kind of changed our society in 9 months. Everything's now being delivered digitally, and we're interacting digitally. And I think, unfortunately, if we don't get people connected soon, we might be leaving a lot of families behind and at a disadvantage in comparison to many others. So I think this is really crucial. And Jonathan, I just wanted to turn over to you. Is there anything you want to add to this conversation from your perspective?
No, just Ms. Elliott and Mayor Bridge hit it right on the head. This is foundational. And just to add a little bit of perspective, from space, there's no everyone looks equal. So whether you're out in the middle of nowhere or in a dense city, a connectivity point is a connectivity point. And so it's agnostic from the technology standpoint. So we just look forward to connecting the unconnected, and like I said, evening that playing field. We've seen education, tutoring services, people selling their goods online, like all this commerce stuff that, as was mentioned, has pushed more to an online world, and we're seeing it and trying to support it as best we can.
Perfect. All right. So I think, let's take it home here. So anyone want to jump in here with some last minute thoughts or something that, is itching their brain and we haven't discussed yet? Mayor Bridge?
Actually, I'm really looking forward to the question period, but certainly from a SWIFT standpoint, if you want to get more information on SWIFT, just go on the website. They've done an amazing job of showing where the projects are, how many homes pass. There's maps on there. You can go on there and see how close you are. And one of the things that came out in spades, even if you don't go, it doesn't go down your road. A good example is University of Guelph. All the research barns were one road over, and I was visiting one of the barns on a tour, and they were going, we have to maybe spend $1 million to bring fiber optic up from Guelph because they really need it. If you ever go in one of their barns, all their cattle have Fitbits on them, and they're all connected to everything. And so it went one road over, so now they're getting it from that road over. So so go on the map, and if you're close, call up the person that's brought that fiber. They may, if you work a plan, they might be able to bring it over to you. So that's what I'm saying. Look for all those opportunities.
Yeah, and I think that sort of local communities helping each other out is so crucial with this, because you don't know until you look whether your neighbor might have it already, and
That's
it
right.
might just be a simple kilometer run, let's say, which in the rural context isn't that long. So I think that's a really great point there, and so please go check out SWIFT. Deputy Mayor Elliott, what do you have to add here to finish off?
Well, I think it's important to know that, we do have opportunities like Starlink, like the projects that are rolling out with SWIFT and SWIFT 2.0. So it's not an overnight fix. And in rural communities who have been struggling like this for a decade, we know that it's not going to be fixed overnight, but there are projects that are happening. There are people like Mayor Bridge and Jonathan and myself who are passionate about this and about getting internet out to everybody. And we are working hard to do that.
Perfect. And Jonathan, let's wrap it up here. What sort of
wrap it up? No pressure. It's not an overnight fix. I totally agree. We can ship you a terminal in 2 or 3 days. So it's not overnight. It's 2 or 3 days. No, we're looking to spread the word about what's possible. We're servicing limited areas. We're trying to work hard to get everybody connected, and appreciate everybody's support, both from the government and the community level. The advocacy has been incredible. And so we just want to thank everyone for their support.
That's perfect. So I think really what I've learned today is, this isn't something that's going to happen overnight, but it's certainly something that we can get at going and get most people connected in the next few years. And I think, it's been stressed many times that this is an all parties effort. Everyone's got to be at the table, and we all got to get along with this, because it's the only way it's going to get done. So I want to thank you all for such a wonderful conversation, and I'm really looking forward to the question and answers that we're going to take. And everyone stay safe, stay healthy, and looking forward to eventually maybe joining you on a patio somewhere in the next year.
All for that.
Thanks, AJ.
All for that.
All right. Good afternoon or morning, everyone. It is still morning, 10:58, and we have Deputy Mayor Elliott joining us, and there's Mayor Bridge and Jonathan from SpaceX. Welcome, folks. So it is great to have you here. That was a pre-recorded session that we did last week, just for stability. So now you get us all live. And I did try and wear the same shirt to provide some continuity, but I see my other panelists may have not had that idea. So it's all good.
Same shirt, different background. Yeah.
Same shirt, different background. I love it. So we've got actually some questions coming in about Starlink, and I'm going to group them for you, John, because I think really what it is, people just want to know, what's the timeline in getting this out to some communities here in Ontario? What's sort of the costs involved? and who's kind of responsible for paying those costs? Is it, I imagine for some of the economic developers here, is it they're paying for part of it and then individual households pay, or is it all up to the user?
Yeah, and great question. So depending on your area, you can log in during this call, put in your address, and see if you can get service. Service, and I should have done the calculation before from Canadian dollars to US dollars, but it's 99 US dollars and $4.99 for the hardware term, for the actual Starlink dish that goes on the roof. We're working with many municipalities to offset the cost of that initial terminal, initial Starlink dish cost. And then, but the consumers, this is just like if you were signing up for any other internet, you go on, we ship it to you 2 or 3 days later, you get it. As I mentioned during the panel, you plug it in, you point it at the sky, it's that easy to set up. We've tried to work really hard to make it simple and easy to deploy. And it's available now in a lot of areas, but not all areas. So if you log into and type in your address, you'll either be brought to a page that says basically on a wait list. And then if there is availability in your area, then you get to connect right away.
Awesome. And we're
Starlink.com.
Starlink.com. Okay.
Yeah.
So we will we'll have someone put that in the chat for everyone. I will do that right now. And Jonathan, I'm gonna maybe toss a question at you. And we're hearing from a few folks that there's a concern about stargazing. Now, this can be a tourism potential for some small rural communities, particularly those in big cities where, I look out my window, I can't really see the night sky ever. I'm just wondering what's sort of the visual impact here and potential visual pollution from Starlink.
Yeah, and this is something that we've been working with. As you might imagine, SpaceX is full of a lot of space nerds who love space, who love the stars, who love the planets, who love all the stuff, the same stuff that the astronomers use. So it is a sensitive subject. And the reaction almost a year ago from one of the first deployments was that the initial orbits that they were in were causing some reflectivity issues. We addressed it head on. We agreed with them. We worked with them. We actually were able to apply a coating to the entire satellite to reduce that reflectivity. And my understanding, that over the last few iterations that we've been able to mitigate a majority of that. It's also worth noting that when we deploy the satellites, we deploy them in a much lower altitude for a couple of reasons. One is we want to make sure they're working, and if they're not working, they'll deorbit by themselves within a short period of time. Being good stewards of space is one of our missions, right? And this is where we're going to work and play, and so we have to take care of it. And so you see the reflectivity when they're in that lower orbit. And then over time, we raise that, and over the course of a month or 2 months, we'll actually raise the orbit to a place where it's a lot less obstructive to the astronomers. But I urge folks that have concerns about that, we'll work with you directly on it. We're not, it's something that we all need to address, but I think we've got to a place where it's a really good solution.
That's really great to hear, John. And I really think, this is something that's iterative, even with, sort of the broadband rollout. There's definitely been issues in how that funding's been distributed or how that infrastructure has been rolled out. And I think everyone at this table has always committed to, we need to engage with these communities. We need to get it right. We need to always be improving. And that's what I think I love about this issue in particular, is everyone seems committed to getting this right, which is awesome. So we did have a question come in from a panelist here, actually to myself as the president of the Town and Gown Association of Ontario. For those of you who are unfamiliar with what we are a coordinating body for communities that are home to universities and colleges right across the province. And we're responsible essentially for coordinating voices to create vibrant and cohesive communities for everyone. So students, neighbors, municipalities, universities and colleges themselves. So if you're interested in learning more about what we do, just visit tgao.ca. But Ian, to address your question in particular, we definitely have had connectivity challenges from many of our members that we've heard about in both urban, suburban, and rural areas. I think what's really happened is the pandemic's kind of ripped an ugly Band-Aid off of internet access. And, many of you have probably been following in Toronto. There was an interesting report that came out about within Toronto itself, 30% of people don't have access to what we would say is a reliable internet connection. So less than 50 megabytes per second. So I think really right across the province, when we're talking about competitiveness, when we're talking about access to education, being online and being able to be connected reliably is such a crucial and important issue. And I think, this is something that maybe cuts across the traditional urban rural divide, but also it cuts across some of the income divide we're seeing. A lot of students that, may be high income, but are from smaller communities are facing the same internet challenges that some are in low income, but are from urban areas. And I think, one of the biggest things and one of the biggest improvements that we can think about is as universities and colleges, how are we delivering online learning? How are we delivering sessions like this? What I really loved that EDCO did was pre-record most of the session so that someone who may have a slower internet connection that doesn't have the ability to watch something live is able maybe to go on later and watch it at a lower quality or at a bit rate that they can actually accommodate on their internet stream. So that's something that I think is so crucial to accessibility, is just thinking about how you deliver content and deliver information. And I think, I'd love to hear from Deputy Mayor Elliott and Mayor Bridge about, that delivery aspect of how do you deliver services in a way that doesn't exclude those that may not be the most connected. So Deputy Mayor Elliott, anything to add there?
Yeah, sure. I actually did a week or so ago a radio interview with CBC Morning about this, and the callers that were calling in were from the GTA, from downtown Toronto, and they were experiencing internet issues as well. So it's definitely not just a rural issue. However, the way I look at it as a rural politician, as well as someone who lives in a rural area, is okay, now you know how we've experienced the last decade or so, because the pandemic has really amplified the issue everywhere. But even just having 4, 5, 6 people in one household trying to maximize the internet has caused strains in the large urban areas as well. And you're right in that when we're providing this access, and I say we as in whoever takes that responsibility at whatever tier of government, is that it can't be just the upper income. It has to be equitable. And when we look at it from an education standpoint, as an example, is the provincial government has the responsibility to provide equitable education to every student across this province. So if we are moving to a virtual remote learning, as we've done, it's the provincial government's responsibility to ensure that everyone, regardless of their economic positioning, regardless of where they live, that they all can access that education equally.
That's great, Deputy Mayor. And I think, Mayor Bridge, what do you have to add here from what Mayor Elliott's
AJ, as far as communication is so important. And when you run into problems with lack of the ability to get your communication out, I know at the town level, we do our council meetings, they're live, but you can actually get a tape later on them based on YouTube. And one of the things we actually have done a bit at the county level and through the libraries is hotspots. We've actually brought some hotspots in, and that's very important because a lot of people can't get anything where they are. So that allows them to do some communication with us. The other thing, we have a lot of vulnerable people that they don't have, so we put out more iPads and other things. We've actually produced through our social services ability for some of those people to be connected. So especially with the pandemic, they don't have the ability to get together and whatever. And with mental health issues and everything else, communication is so important. That's why it goes back to what we've talked about through this whole panel. It's such a viable, it's so important to have the quality internet that you need just to survive in today's current world, the digital world. So all our people that aren't wealthy enough to get their own computers, we're trying to get them some computers, get them some help with hotspots, and it's limited, but that's one of the things we've been working on.
Yeah, Mayor Bridge, I think you've brought up a really important point. Is it's not just getting the fiber to people, it's also making sure that they know how to take advantage of it once it's there. or getting them the devices to actually be able to access it. And one of in the chat, I just noticed, thank you, Ryan Deska, for bringing this up about Digital Main Street, which I think has been a great program for BIAs right across the province and a lot of economic developers in getting small businesses up to speed. But I do think there is a lot more work to do, and the Digital Main Street pool isn't that large in the grand scheme of, competing against some global heavyweights that have emerged in the delivery sector. So I think there's a really crucial conversation that needs to happen about digital equity and access for people, not just getting the infrastructure there, but also how do we train people and how do we get these small businesses and entrepreneurs online. So all really great points here. And Ian, thanks again for your question here. So really what I'd love to hear from the panelists maybe is, how can you best advocate on behalf of your businesses in your communities that are experiencing limitations of the internet availability? Who do you work with? Like, who's your first call? Mayor Bridge, let's hear from you.
Oh, I get those calls all the time. Thanks for that. Actually, and one of the things is we try to work together, and Swift or some of other internet providers, we try to get them, as I said before, if they're close enough, maybe work out a deal. Because sometimes businesses will say, well, it's going to cost me X number of dollars. Now we move fiber towards them, and now the dollar amount will come down because they don't have to come 25 kilometers. Now you're only 5 kilometers away or 2 kilometers away. So very important to keep that communication going and finding out, keeping a sort of inventory of who needs it next, and try to work very hard on that. I guess that's it. I don't know if that answers your question or not, AJ, but that's the communication factor back and forth. One of the things on digital, though, between March and this last lockdown, we did 50 businesses in our little towns and put them on digital coaching and digital. So now they can do even though they're locked down, they can actually do all their retail online. And we're seeing a big push to buy local because people can do that locally and go in and just pick it up. So again, it goes back to the need of having that broadband.
That's really crucial. And Deputy Mayor Elliott, is there anything you'd like to add about things that you may be doing or that Thames Center does when you get those calls of I need to get connected or my kids just can't get on online learning?
Yeah, I probably take those calls daily from constituents, but I think it is, like Mayor Bridge said, it's important to have that communication factor with your local municipal elected officials. And just because, as I mentioned in the pre-recording, a lot of it comes down to when municipalities are looking at implementation, when we're looking at projects like SWIFT, we look at where the needs are. And when we know where the needs are in our community, that's when we can best advocate, as well as reach out to your MP and your MPP as well. I mean, it doesn't hurt for them to hear the needs of the community as well firsthand. And the more they hear it, it's that famous phrase when you say the greasy or the squeaky wheel gets the grease. So just keep advocating for your communities because it is very important.
Yeah, and I think that's really crucial about the squeaky wheel analogy. And I think Mayor Bridge brought this up with how successful SWIFT has been. And I think what's really crucial for folks to learn from all of this and the experience of SWIFT is you united a region, you got all the major players together, and you all work together to deliver on an objective. And so I think, for this group, EDCO and this conference is really crucial to exchange knowledge like this. But I also think it's really important for you to be calling up your neighboring municipalities when you hear these issues, because there might be a fiber line just sitting right across the county line that you're not aware of just yet. And it wouldn't cost much to maybe bring it back over. And so that's where I think there's a lot of opportunities here in Ontario to really, deliver internet access to the Ontario families. I don't think, how crucial this is really the new utility. And if we want to draw parallels to previous big projects in Ontario, this is like delivering electricity back in the 50s. This is like delivering clean drinking water to most of rural Ontario in the 80s and 90s. This is a big policy objective, and we've got it done, and we can get it done again. So Deputy Mayor Elliott, Jonathan, Mayor Bridge, is there anything else you'd like to add to this conversation before we wrap it up?
Yeah, I'll just add to the previous question for the squeaky wheel. We have all our infrastructures deployed. It's sitting overhead. We have to flip the switch to turn it on. So that's where the advocacy for folks for the northern latitudes would be helpful. it's there. We can solve the pain almost imminently in a lot of cases. So ask to again, call your municipalities and talk to your neighbors about it too. And so we could use your support there, and excited to get more people connected. I did want to put out, people asked about how do you get the small businesses connected. Right now, we just sell the residential plans online, but for the small business plans, those will be coming online shortly. But if you have a business, you can feel free to, you can email me directly. I'm just jonathan@spacex.com. AJ, if you want to put that in there, I'm happy for folks to call me directly or email me directly. But I want to leave with that.
Awesome. Thank you, Jonathan. And over to you, Mayor Bridge.
Jonathan, AJ, I just want to say that when I started this in 2014, I thought it was never going to happen. I'm so optimistic now. I think we're near the end of the tunnel, and it's not the train coming at us. We see the light, and I think we're going to get there. And I know Mayor Kelly is going. Deputy Mayor Kelly will help us on that.
That's really great. And so, Deputy Mayor Elliott, take us home.
So just a thank you to everyone for attending this, and obviously you know how important the connectivity is to economic development in your communities, and just keep being advocates for your communities, like Jonathan and Mayor Bridge and I have said. You know, it's up to everyone to keep the communication line going to get this infrastructure in the ground and to get the Starlink project out to everybody. Connectivity, again, is so important, and all of us play a part in delivering it.
That's a really great point. Everyone here is all in it together. I think, you know, we've stressed the fact that this cuts across, you know, rural, remote, suburban, urban. Internet access is so crucial, and I think there's a lot we can learn from each other and a lot more we can share. And Mayor Bridge, I really like the sentiment. I think, you know, it's really exciting days in Ontario, and what I think this panel has shown is we can do some things better, we can do some things faster, but I think we're well on our way to delivering this for Ontario families. So I want to extend a huge thank you to all the panelists on behalf of the attendees, and thank you all for participating in this session. I am hugely honored to be able to share the screen with all of you and feel a little bit put out in that I don't have nearly the qualifications or the experience that all of you do on this issue, but I'm super privileged to have the conversation with you. So thank you.
Thank you for bringing us together.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, AJ. And don't underestimate yourself there, man. And to all of our panelists, that was an incredibly insightful session and facing a critical issue here in Ontario. I couldn't agree with you more, AJ. That broadband is an essential service. It is a piece of infrastructure, just like water, hydro, roads. It is our main communications tool. So thank you, Mayor Bridge and Deputy Mayor Elliott, for your continued advocacy and ensuring that rural municipalities get connected. And Jonathan, I think you're going to be getting a few emails from EDCO members. So thanks for putting your email out there for all of us. Thank you once again to all of the panelists for thought-provoking chat. In lieu of speaker gifts for today, a contribution to the EDCO sponsorship fund will be made in their honor. In addition to today's session, our sponsor, Calix, has provided some more education around this topic with on-demand session called Municipal Broadband, deploying the high-speed connectivity your community is demanding. You can find it on the EDCO conference website under the on-demand education sessions menu. We will now have a short 5-minute break where you can continue conversations in the chat, get a drink, or take that bio break. And we'll all see you back here for the final session of the day, Trillium GIS, a platform for sustainable asset and capability mapping. And that's sponsored by the Trillium Network for Advanced Manufacturing. I'm just looking to keep us on time. We're going to be back here at 11:20, so you're going to get to 2.5 minutes. We'll see you shortly.